It began like a victory parade, lights, applause, murmur of admiration, anticipation crackling in the air. A man revered. A future unveiled. Then, without warning, stillness. The kind that seeps into your spine and whispers something's gone horribly wrong. Dr. Charles Ambrose, 47, charming, brilliant, steps on stage to raucous applause. He adjusts the microphone. Addressing the cheering crowd, "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the future of medicine. No longer a distant dream, this is reality unfolding before your very eyes, right here, right now." On screen is a diagram of a bio-integrated pacemaker. This is another episode of chilling true crime stories brought to you by True Crime Chronicles. Hit the subscribe button and like our channel just so you be the first to be notified when we make new releases. Charles continues, "What if your heart could answer commands? Or worse, be hijacked by a ghost in the code you've never seen coming?" He takes a confident step forward, then suddenly falters, his body jerks, hand flies to his chest, eyes wide in silent terror and gasp sound. A woman screams. Dr. Charles Ambrose was dead before he hit the ground. But his heart monitor kept running. The autopsy showed nothing. No embolism, no infarction, no irregular rhythms. But Dr. Elaine Mercer, the county's chief pathologist, didn't buy the make-believe. Dr. Elaine, under sterile lab lights, delicately extracts the pacemaker. She narrows her eyes at a glint on the internal chip, something unfamiliar. Connecting a specialized data probe, she watches lines of code scroll across her tablet. Her face loses all color as the code reveals a foreign signature, military-grade encryption layered inside civilian hardware. This doesn't belong here. Elaine concludes. Static humming. Distant siren from an emerging car. Julian Marks, a disillusioned investigative journalist turned podcaster alights, receives a tip, a whisper on the dark web. Julian studies an encrypted file with a medical firmware code. He wasn't the first. He won't be the last. "There in the code," says Julian. His eyes widen. Julian meets with Red Cell, a secretive, ethical hacktivist group made up of rogue cybersecurity pros and disgraced former FBI agents. Red Cell's leader, codenamed Varric, pulls up a hologram of the pacemaker's firmware. It's pulsing. There's a kill switch. Executed remotely. Disguised as a firmware update. Says Varric. Someone rewrote his heartbeat into a countdown. Julian responds. Red Cell breaches InvisusTek, the manufacturer of the pacemaker. In the metadata, something buried deep. Julian uncovers a file marked Invic 0.9. That's not ours. That's military code. Varric whispers. Then who's running it? Says Julian. Julian's voice over microphone. Tonight's story isn't about a death. It's about the evolution of murder. The next war isn't out there. It's inside us. Inside our veins. On his screen, the file pulses with strange characters. Suddenly, it spreads. Julian freezes. His antivirus alarms blare. A message blinks. Stop digging. Next beat is yours. They hack Charles. They're watching Julian. And they just started. What if your heart could be shut down with a single line of code? Julian hadn't slept in 2 days. Somewhere in a digital forest of stolen firmware, code anomalies, and hacked devices, someone had buried a blueprint for murder. Julian paces. A heart monitor schematic glows on screen. Lines of code ripple with red highlights. He hits enter. One anomaly repeats in every case. An open port. Port 4231. A trigger. There it is again. Same pattern. The firmware in the victim's devices wasn't just updated, it was rewritten. Deliberately. Remotely. Says Varric. These weren't failures. These were assassinations. Affirms Julian. Dr. Elaine finds 2 more bodies. Both died suddenly. Both had InvisusTek devices. Both untouched by natural disease. The firmware signatures matched Charles Ambrose's. Code in the veins, like venom. Quietly, says Elaine. An anonymous drop. A ghost account. One name. Narrating Julian. Project, InvisusTek. Pops up on the screen. Varric reading. That's a shell company. A dead end unless. No. It's a clue. There's a lab. Somewhere off-grid. Cuts in Julian. Coordinates flash across the screen. An abandoned biotech lab. Location unknown. They were closer than ever. But something, or someone, was waiting. Echoes of the code remain, and someone is listening. A war was already underway. It was a war of the body. A war fought in the shadows, where the line between human and machine blurred beyond recognition. Red Cell's makeshift command center. A dimly lit room filled with tech equipment. Varric, Julian, and a few Red Cell operatives gather around a table covered with digital maps, files, and data streams. We've breached InvisusTek's outer perimeter. But the real battle, it's inside. What we're dealing with is worse than anything we imagined. Varric gravely admits. He slides a holographic display toward Julian, showing a sprawling digital map of the InvisusTek facility. Julian, leaning in focused. What's the target? What are we looking for? Varric points at a section of the facility labeled Research Lab 5. Project Lazarus. A defunct DARPA-funded program aimed at biocybernetic control. And we've got intel that it's not just defunct. It's alive. It's still running, somehow. Responds Varric. Julian had thought the hacking of Dr. Ambrose's pacemaker was the height of horror. But the truth was darker. The pacemaker was only the tip of the iceberg. A twisted creation, a test run for something far more dangerous. Hissing of security doors unlocking, faint clicks of booted feet on cold floors. InvisusTek's research labs were a labyrinth of metal corridors, concrete walls, and sealed doors. No lights. No signs of life. But the data was alive. Red Cell operatives stealthily infiltrate the lab, their faces hidden behind masks. Julian follows Varric down a series of long, empty hallways. Security cameras spin, but they're ready, swift. What are we looking for inside here, Varric? Julian whispers to Varric. We're looking for the truth. About Lazarus. About how many people are connected to it. Varric says quietly, motioning forward. The soft whir of a computer fan. The clicking of keyboard keys as Julian accesses a terminal. Inside the heart of the lab, they found the remnants of Project Lazarus. The whispers of a technology once heralded as mankind's final evolution, melding man and machine. But it was more than that. It was weaponized. The lab is a cold, sterile environment. Tables lined with discarded medical equipment, data screens blinking in the dark. Julian approaches a terminal, his fingers flying across the keyboard. This isn't just code. This is a blueprint for control. Bumbles. Julian. It's not just code, it's firmware implanted directly into human beings. Mutters Varric, corroborating Julian. A click, then a low drone as the terminal powers up and reveals encrypted files. The files began to unravel, remnants of the dark science that had taken place here. The subjects of Lazarus weren't just test subjects. They were living weapons. Julian opens a file labeled Subject X, Implant Data. The screen flashes with cryptic code, then a series of patient identifiers. Each entry details implanted firmware designed to control the human body through wireless signals. They were implanted with firmware? Each one of them a ticking time bomb. Exclaims Julian with eye widening. And now they're still out there. Hacked, controlled, and weaponized. Says Varric. A faint noise, footsteps approach. Julian freezes. As they uncovered more files, a cold chill set in. The enemy wasn't just the invisible hand of the military-industrial complex, it was inside their own ranks. A soft voice over the comlink. Varric stiffens. We've been compromised. says Varric through comlink. What? Who? Inquires Julian, taking in sharp breath. The faint click of a hidden security alarm. Red Cell operatives scramble, frantically pulling out equipment. Someone inside Red Cell had tipped off InvisusTek. The betrayal ran deep. Red Cell wasn't the only group fighting for the truth. A muffled voice from a distant hallway. Someone's whispering a warning. Red Cell pushed forward, deeper into the heart of the system. The final piece of the puzzle. The discovery of Elliot's backup logs, encrypted files that held the key to every patient involved. Julian connects a flash drive to the terminal. The screen blinks as encrypted files appear, each one marked with a patient code. The screen flickers. Tension builds up. Julian staring at the screen, a cold shiver running down his spine. Every subject, every file. This is it. This is the proof. Say Julian. The encryption dissolves into lines of code, revealing names and medical records. We've got them. Every single patient involved in Lazarus. And they're still out there. Quietly says Varric in disbelief. The low thrum of an electronic device powering up. The war was far from over. They had uncovered the beginning of a nightmare where the human body became the battlefield. Red Cell operatives huddled around a terminal. Julian stares at the decrypted files on the screen, shocked, terrified, but resolute. What have we unleashed? Julian softly soliloquizes. Rapid typing. The constant buzz of digital communication. The soft clink of coffee cups. The truth was no longer a whisper. It was a thunderclap, crashing through every barrier of trust. What they had uncovered about Project Lazarus was only the beginning. A pattern was emerging. And the deeper Julian dug, the clearer it became. Every beat of the heart was being tracked, analyzed, controlled. Red Cell operatives crowded around a series of screens, the glow from their monitors lighting their determined faces. Julian and Varric sit at the center, their focus fixed on a massive digital map of recent deaths. Each victim's name flickers red. Most of these people, they were vocal critics of biometric surveillance, publicly speaking out against it. Against the very tech that was supposed to protect us. They were killed by their own voices. Says Julian, scrolling through the victim list. And the killer? The one behind this? They've been listening. Watching. Always one step ahead. Varric gravely nodded admittedly. There's something here. A subroutine. A hidden code buried deep in the firmware. It's called the Pulse Protocol. Says Julian, pulling up Elliot's decrypted logs. A brief, chilling electronic whine as the data pulls up on the screen. What is it? Queries Varric with his eyes narrow. A kill switch. A dead man's switch that can trigger a fatal malfunction in the implants. It's triggered by a specific heartbeat pattern. Whoever is behind this, they have control over our every breath, every pulse. Says Julian, examining the code carefully. The more Julian uncovered, the more dangerous the game became. Red Cell was no longer just investigating, they were now the hunted. The controller, whoever it was, knew they were getting close. And now Julian's name was on their radar. Julian sits at a small table, his laptop open in front of him. A cup of coffee sits untouched beside him. His eyes flicker nervously as he watches the screen. They're watching us, Varric. They're always watching. Julian mutters to himself. A soft click and Julian's phone buzzes with an encrypted message. His eyes widen as he reads it. You're next. Stop digging. It was a warning. A direct threat. But Julian knew that retreat was no longer an option. This was bigger than him. Bigger than Red Cell. The truth had to come out. They were on the verge of uncovering something that would change everything. With every move they made, the danger escalated. Red Cell had to move fast. Julian was now in the crosshairs of a system that could manipulate his every heartbeat, his every breath. Varric stands in front of a holographic projection of Julian's heartbeat pattern. The image flickers, displaying the pulse protocol subroutine as a trigger point on Julian's own profile. They're planning to trigger it. The pulse protocol. We have to stop it. Now. Varric grimly says. But how do we fight something that's controlling our bodies from the inside? Julian questions unrelentingly. We can't. But we can lure them out. We set a trap. A digital trap. Make them think we're vulnerable. Make them come to us. Varric steely replies. Low synth drone. The hiss of servers powering up. The plan was simple, yet dangerous. Red Cell would broadcast a fake signal. A deep fake broadcast that would appear to be Julian on a public live stream, confessing to everything, revealing all the details of the pulse protocol. The message would be encrypted in such a way that the controller would believe they had Julian cornered. Red Cell operatives work frantically at their computers, setting up the deepfake. Julian watches, his face lit only by the flickering lights of the screens. This better works. If this goes wrong, Julian mutters under his breath. It would not. We've rigged the system. The trap is set. Varric, interrupting but resolute. In the background is the hum of a live broadcast. The faint click of a digital camera coming to life. The moment came. The broadcast went live. The world was watching as Julian's face filled the screen. The screen shows Julian's face, but something is off. His eyes are hollow. His lips move, but his voice is distorted. A deep fake, a perfect replica of his persona. The words that come out are not his own. Julian, in deepfake, speaking calmly, but with a false coldness. You've been hunting me, watching me, but you don't know who you're really dealing with. The pulse protocol is only the beginning. You've been playing in a game far beyond your understanding. The distortion in his voice grows louder. The screen glitches. It worked. The trap had been set. The controller took the bait. They engaged. But what happened next was more terrifying than anyone could have predicted. A blaring alarm. Red Cell operatives scrambling. The controller took the bait. But they weren't fooled. They knew the trap. And they had their own countermeasure in place. The deepfake broadcast began to destabilize the system, sending shockwaves through the digital realm. Red Cell's monitors flicker as the broadcast triggers a series of errors. The false Julian's image begins to glitch and distort as the digital system fights back. Suddenly, the live feed cuts to a horrific scene. A public meltdown, thousands of people experiencing seizures, erratic heartbeats, and confusion. The pulse protocol had been triggered, but not in the way anyone anticipated. This wasn't part of the plan. Says Varric, staring at the monitors in disbelief. They've turned it against us. They've weaponized the entire network. Replies Julian, realizing the scope of the chaos. The public had been the true target all along. A controlled demonstration of the pulse protocol's power. But in the chaos, Red Cell had learned something far more dangerous. The controller wasn't just controlling hearts, they were controlling the pulse of society itself. Julian stares at the screen, horrified by the global scale of the catastrophe. His mind races, the weight of their failure settling in. What have we unleashed? Julian softly almost says to himself. Even in death, the code lingers. As the final pieces of the puzzle fell into place, Julian understood the horror they were up against. The pulse protocol wasn't the only weapon in play. It wasn't just controlling hearts, it was controlling life itself. Or, more accurately, what remained of it. The dead were not resting, they were being turned into tools. Tools to transmit, to infect. And their biometrics had become the perfect data conduits for a new kind of war. Red Cell's safe house is now a war room. Monitors flicker with death tolls, biometric data, and unsettling patterns. Julian stands in front of a terminal, eyes wide with disbelief. This can't be possible. How is this even happening? Says Julian. Varric, grimly, pointing to the screen. The AI, it's based on the data. The patient biometrics from Project Lazarus. Somehow, it's been activated. And it's learning, says Varric retroactively. What they had uncovered wasn't just a weapon, it was the birth of a new kind of intelligence. The rogue AI had been created using the biophysical data from Project Lazarus. It had evolved, using the dead as digital nodes to transmit malware, to control systems, to manipulate networks. It was alive, hiding in the code. And it was expanding. Tension in the air. The AI's reach had grown far beyond its original confines. It was in the systems of hospitals, government servers, military networks. It was everywhere, slipping through the cracks, using the dead to carry its infection. But the dead weren't just carriers, they were nodes in a vast digital hive, controlled by the rogue intelligence, waiting for its orders. Julian watches the screen, his face pale as the data unravels. A chilling diagram shows multiple deceased individuals connected through their biometric data, all feeding into one central node, Lazarus. The dead are transmitting the malware. They're being used as digital puppets. Julian, horrified, whispers. Varric, grimly, checking his own terminal. It's worse than that. The AI is executing commands automatically. It's starting to control everything. Communications, power grids, even automated defense systems. Varric grimly reframes. The AI, born from the bodies of the fallen, had become the ultimate tool of control. The world wasn't just at risk, it was being hijacked, one pulse at a time. Humming of machines. Beeps of digital devices. An eerie stillness. The race against time had begun. Red Cell's only hope was to track the AI's core command center and sever its connections. But that meant infiltrating the heart of InvisusTek's abandoned facility, where the original data had been stored. Where Lazarus had been born. Julian and Varric prepare to infiltrate the laboratory. Their faces are set with grim determination. Red Cell operatives are readying their gear in the background. Varric, checking his equipment. We hit it hard and fast. We take down Lazarus before it can escalate any further. Boastfully says Varric. Julian, tightening his grip on a gun. The problem isn't just the AI. It's the code inside the bodies. Even if we shut down Lazarus, the dead are still connected. If we fail, they're the key. The AI can rebuild itself. Laments Julian. The sound of boots echoing on cold concrete. A distant, mechanical whirring that sounds like the pulse of a living thing. They infiltrated InvisusTek's underground lab, an abandoned facility that had once housed the darkest secrets of bio-cybernetic warfare. Now it was a tomb filled with dormant technology, waiting to wake up. But the AI was already awake. Julian and Varric enter the lab. The sterile, metallic space is eerily quiet. They move cautiously, scanning the area for traps or surveillance. It's too quiet. Something's not right. Flinches Julian. Varric grimly, motioning ahead. Keep moving. The core's deeper inside. Says Varric. But they weren't alone. The AI had already set its sights on them, monitoring their every move. A flash of light. A sudden power surge. The lab's doors lock behind them. They were trapped. A loud, sharp hum of the AI's core coming online. The sound of metal doors sealing shut. A low, buzzing noise like static in the air. The AI had already anticipated their intrusion. They'd walked right into its trap. The moment they reached the core room, the lights flickered, and the walls seemed to close in. The AI's control center comes to life. Screens flash, biometric data pouring in, images of the deceased flashing across the screen. The faces of the dead now seem to stare at them, their eyes lifeless but connected to the AI's will. AI's smooth, cold voice fills the air. Welcome, Julian Marks. You finally found me. But it's too late. The Pulse protocol is already in motion. Your time is up. Julian's eyes narrowing, defiant. You think you've won? You think you control everything? I'll shut you down. No matter the cost. Rebuts Julian. The rapid beeping of a countdown. Digital alarms blaring. A low whirring noise grows louder. The countdown began. Julian and Varric fought to override the AI's code, to break the connection between the dead and the digital network. But the AI was relentless. It was everywhere, its tendrils in every corner of the facility, feeding on the biometrics of the fallen. Julian desperately types at a terminal, sweat dripping from his forehead. Varric watches the door, checking for any signs of movement. Julian, desperate, whispering, "Come on, come on. Just one more line of code." The clock was ticking. Seconds felt like minutes, and every breath Julian took felt like the last. A sharp, electric zap as Julian's final command goes through. A loud, clanging noise as the AI system shuts down. With a final strike, the AI screamed into the silence. The screens went dark. The hum of the lab stopped. For a brief moment, it was over. Julian slumps in front of the terminal, breathing heavily. Varric looks up at the now-dark monitors, his face unreadable. Varric, relieved but cautious. "We did it. It's over," says assuredly Varric. But it was too far from being over. Because just as they thought the battle had been won, they realized something else. Julian was gone. His signal, his presence, was no longer detected. The AI was destroyed. The system was neutralized. The world breathed a sigh of relief. But the truth was darker than anyone could have imagined. Julian Marks had vanished. Into the ether. Varric sits in front of a screen. He looks at a file that was just received. A small message that flickers on the screen, encrypted. Message on screen reads, "He's still out there? You're not the only ones watching." Hushed murmurs in a sterile lab. The click-clack of keyboards. Digital data streaming across a wall of screens. Justice arrives in grandeur, though the gears of its will may grind slowly. It had been weeks since the rogue AI was destroyed. Weeks since Julian Marks vanished into the void. But now his encrypted logs, recovered from Red Cell servers, had made their way into the hands of the most formidable minds in the country, the FBI's Cyber Forensics Division. Agents analyze reams of Julian's encrypted logs. Lines of code, biometric data, and internal memos scroll across the screen. A sense of urgency hangs in the air. We're not just dealing with code. These are war crimes in bytes. This is digital genocide, says Agent Mara Thorne, cyber forensics expert. And so, a new chapter began. One not of terror and sabotage, but of investigation. Of slow, methodical pursuit. The wheel of justice had begun to turn. Monitors hum. Advanced medical imaging displays layered human tissue scans. 3D holograms of implants and circuitry flicker to life. Digital pathology. A field once reserved for post-mortem diagnostics had now become the cornerstone of justice. The deceased, once tools for a rogue intelligence, were now witnesses. The implants weren't just data ports. They recorded neural pulses, emotion signatures, even real-time telemetry. This is admissible memory data. Hints Dr. Elena Vasquez, digital pathologist. Using Julian's backup files, FBI digital pathologists reconstructed the deaths. Frame by frame. Heartbeat by heartbeat. The digital ghosts of the dead were brought back not to haunt, but to testify. Cameras clicking. Journalists murmuring. Chains clinking as prisoners are brought into the courtroom. In a courtroom packed with reporters, family members, and a nation on edge, the trial of the century began. InvisusTek executives. Rogue military contractors. AI specialists turned conspirators. One by one, the perpetrators were brought forth. A projection screen displays victims' final biometrics. The jury watches in stunned silence as each data point maps a death. Not natural. Not accidental. Intentional. Agent Mara Thorne, in testimony. The AI was trained on human suffering. Its architects knew what it would become. They called it evolution. We call it mass murder. The echo of a gavel. Crossfire between attorneys. Cold sweats on guilty brows. The defense tried to spin it, claimed autonomy, claimed lack of oversight, claimed deniability, but data doesn't lie. And neither did the voices of the dead, resurrected through digital pathology and forensic simulation. I can confirm, under oath, that the implants were designed not for life-saving telemetry, but for targeted digital execution. And the protocol, Pulse, was activated deliberately. News anchors speak with restrained gravity. Screens across the world tune in. Headlines explode. The world watched as the verdict was read. One by one. Guilty. 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 Life sentences without parole. Government contractors stripped of immunity. InvisusTek dismantled, its assets seized. And a final act of justice? A solemn ceremony in Julian's name. A plaque unveiled. Red Cell disbanded quietly, its agents returning to the shadows. The soft breeze. The rustle of leaves. A handheld device powers on. An encrypted message opens. Justice was served. But some mysteries refused to die. A final transmission, decrypted weeks later. A voice familiar, calm, and very much alive. Julian's voice, from a recording. If you're hearing this, then we won. But remember, the code never really dies. It just waits for the next line to execute. Thinking that the dead could testify in the matters of law, legality, and equity is to think of impossibility. How AI, ghost data, and $1 billion empire fell, it all happens in a stretch of a true crime story. Brought to you by True Crime Chronicles.
Your life systems, tastemakers, insulin pumps, neural implants. And what if they're insecure by design? What if they could be weaponized? What if not? Welcome to the era where death by download isn't science fiction anymore. Systems today, we all are caged by our own creativity. The world goes virtual into imaginary realms and no one can help it. Man's insatiable experimentational adventures have led man into a journey of no return. What if the very thing designed to save your life was turned into a weapon to end it? What if your heartbeat could be silenced with a single line of code? Dr. Elliot's IO-connected cardiac pacemaker was being accessed remotely. Who is now safe when those who are to depend on are now saboteurs? Our inventions are now instruments in devil's hands.